Today, in part 2 of this 4-part mini-series, we'll be looking at another old camera. In 1966, a company called Minolta released the SRT-101. I had never heard of Minolta before. This is the first time I've heard of them or done any research, but they were definitely one of the major players in the camera game back in the day. It's pretty cool. They operated from 1929 to 2003. And apparently, this camera specifically, the SRT-101, was apparently one of the more popular cameras of its time. I found an ad online that mentioned that over 3 million had sold, which is pretty cool. I found an ad from 1970 that offered this camera for $260. I'm not sure if that's the release price or if it had dropped over the 4 years, but that's $2,156 today. Cameras were expensive back then for sure. So to kind of look over it here, give an overview, which I mentioned that's all this video is. If you're looking for something much more in depth, there are plenty of people who have done that. I'm just kind of looking over it, picking out the things that I found interesting and talking about them. Looking at it on the top, we've got a little window here that tells you the number of exposures you have left or how many you've taken at that point. I'm not sure. It does not function because the camera itself is broken. It no longer shutters or actuates. It is just completely stuck as far as I can tell, which makes sense. It's fairly old. We've got a wheel here, a gear that has some numbers on it. I believe the outer one with the bigger numbers is setting your shutter speed. And then if you pull up, there's an inner one that probably is your film speed. That's what I'm guessing based on the numbers that I'm seeing. I'm not 100% sure on that. But then to get into the camera, this is your film wind here. You got to pull up on this all the way, and that releases the back plate. I thought it was broken for a while because I could not figure out how to get into this thing until I found out online how you actually get into there. But then 35 millimeter film goes in here, crosses over where it would get exposed and rolls up over here. Very cool. Makes sense. We have a 35 millimeter Minolta lens with this, which is pretty cool. An f35 millimeter. I assume that's supposed to be 3.5, but it actually does not contain a point, so it just says 35. But you control a lot of the settings on here. This is pretty neat as well. Now, researching online for this, it looks like this was not the first TTL or through the lens metering at full aperture. It's not the first camera that ever did that, but it certainly popularized it to become mainstream, making photography more accessible. I found a brochure where they describe that the principle is not new, but the way that they use it is. This may be the first full aperture through the lens. I wasn't 100% sure on looking back through that. But there was a whole feature on here that was revolutionary for the time. CLC is printed right here on the front, and it stands for Contrast Light Compensation Metering. This is a really complex topic. There's a ton to understand and learn about this, and since this is just kind of an overview, I summed it up like this. It measures both the bright and dark parts of the scene and exposes for an average, so you don't wind up underexposing, I think.
Did it just...
It's never done that. It's been stuck before. When I was playing around with it, it actually did not. So that's the timer. That's how you set a self timer. You're setting it up. You're taking a picture of your family or something, and you want to put a timer on it. You would pull this back, and it would go somehow. Oh, that's how we can manually expose. Well, it went before. I don't know how. Oh, wait. So now we've wound up another, and that's just taking it. So I don't know why the timer's not going now. So maybe the shutter actually does work on this. I mean, it clearly does. We can hear it. Let's see if we can get the lens off and take a look at that. Oh, I touched the shutter. The timer. It makes quite a racket. I don't know how much of that's coming through on the mic. But if we take that off, this has seen better days. I don't know how much that's going to come through on the camera. Everything in here is incredibly dusty, incredibly dirty. I cleaned it up some, but I don't want to mess with too many of the elements inside because I don't know what I'm doing entirely. I can tell you when you look through here, I don't have a way to show you that, but when you look through here, It should have. It's got a little guide down at the bottom that kind of shows you like what your settings are. That is completely askew and broken, but I can see it. It is very scratched. It is very dirty. It is pretty old, but it may still function. I thought it was broken entirely, but it's possible that this one is still functioning and working considering... Oh, nope, that won't. It won't go because the shutter, this timer... Oh, that's what it is here. So what's the timer release? This one will release the shutter. I'm not sure. Okay. Well, you know what we do have that we can look at? We have the manual. The Minolta SRT-101 Owner's Manual. If I were to take the time, okay. Oh, since the inception of the through-the-lens exposure measuring for single-lens reflex SLR cameras, several systems have been developed. Some spot read only a small part of the total area. Other systems provide an average reading composed of independent measurements taken by two cells, which is not accurate in high-contrast situations. Only the Minolta SRT-101 has an exclusive new type of circuit, CLC, to provide optimum reading of the entire picture area regardless of degree of contrast. Yeah, so that's what it is. It uses the entire aperture instead of just like spot checking and going, yeah, the middle of your photo is going to be exposed properly and everything else is not. It's actually checking all of it. That's really cool. So this is clearly pretty old and is in a bit of a state here and does not want to lay flat. Yeah, this going through everything. The self-timer lever, focusing rings. That is the diaphragm stop down button. What does that do? Oh, that's right. So it does take a battery. There's a battery in here. It's a little, let's see if I can get it out with a glove on. Button cell battery. Looks fairly familiar. However, oh, no, it does not. Thank you. It does not contain a battery still. So you would have a battery in there and then you'd be able to check it. You can turn your battery off and on, turning the camera off and on, or there's also BC here, which is battery check. So you can make sure that your battery still has power, I suppose. Don't leave it on battery check all the time because it will kill the battery. Sure. Look at the internal workings of that and how they use this. This is neat. Okay, so that's what's on the back. ASA/DIN. When converting a DIN speed to the corresponding ASA speed to remember film speed, use this conversion scale. So that's just like a cheat sheet on the back there. This little bit that spins around is just a cheat sheet between ASA and DIN. I do not have an explanation of what those are, but they are definitely types of speeds of film. Interesting. Oh, look, a depth of field table. This is how you set the correct exposure. If you have a flash unit, you can put that on the top, and then that plugs into, there are two little bits here on the side, an FP and an X plug in there. One is designated, which ones? Let's see. Flash bulbs and electronic flash units are recommended. Two sinks. One is designated FP, the other X. Electronic flash must be the X one, and then FP class bulbs use the other one. So they're actually two different kinds of units that you could attach to it. Really neat. That's how you check the depth of field. Oh, that's what that is. Okay. See, I made a note about this, but I didn't see it. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, that's neat. There is a function on modern cameras that I took for granted, not realizing when exactly it came about, but it's how you can check what's in focus with your depth of field by pressing a button on the camera. That's what that is. Still no information here on how to make the timer go so that we can get it back to where it was. Unless that's it. No, it goes all the way up there. It did before. But I don't know how I activated that. Yeah, see, it's stuck here because the timer... Okay, so that's where the problem lies. Something in here does not trigger this to go. And so the timer is stuck, so it think, well, I can't wind anymore because we're in the middle of a timed photo. This, you can manually flip that up out of the way so that you could do an exposure yourself or check the film. Interesting. What does that do? Whoops. Okay. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Interesting. So clearly, I don't know enough about this camera. Yeah, it does. Okay. It does have a note saying if the film has not been advanced, the lever will stop after returning about 45 degrees and the shutter will not be released. You can override it by pushing. Okay. So there may actually be something stuck in the camera that is preventing it from doing that. It needs to be probably properly cared for and maintained, oiled. But anyway, so clearly I still have some more research to do learning about this camera and the functions of it, how it works. But there we go. Kind of an overview of some of the things that I found interesting, what I actually could discover in it, given the time that I set myself before recording these. There actually was another, interestingly enough, I don't have any family history on this one specifically. I'm sure it was my dad's because that's kind of the theme of what we've got going on here and why they were passed along to me. There was another one that was an exact same Minolta SRT-101 that my brother kept. He sent me a picture of it and was like, yeah, no, I kept this one. And it looks the same. It might be in slightly nicer condition, but it looks to be about the same. It had a crazy strap on it. That actually was really cool. Something we talked about was making a collection of all of the vintage camera straps because in the 1970s, they went crazy with the colors. The patterns on them are beautiful. But there we go. The Minolta SRT-101. Really cool. I like the look of it, if nothing else. For me and my purposes, it's going to sit on a shelf and look really neat. I'm happy about it. This is something that I like. But wait, there's more. I completely forgot about it. I couldn't find very much information on it, so that's why I missed it in my notes. But we actually had a second lens. This just says Pro on it. The Automatic Pro, I think. We've got a telephoto lens. This is a big beast of a lens here. Grab the camera again for comparison. I finished recording entirely. This is a 90 to 230 millimeter lens. Yeah, it's a big beefy thing. But yeah, really cool telephoto lens. Pro automatic is what we have on there. I don't know if you can see that, probably not. 90 to 230 millimeter, and then the serial number. So not made by Minolta, not made by, and apparently these were made by a ton of people. That's why I couldn't find any definitive research on something like this, but I think it's interesting. The manual kind of lens that it is back in the day, you've got a couple different options for your shutter or for your aperture, 4.5 all the way up to 22. You can manually change the zoom here and then your focusing distance. And although very dirty, it does seem to work. And I guess this is an interesting little feature. This would actually, I guess this is your lens hood that's built in so that it would come out a little bit. That's about the best that I can figure. But yeah, so we also had a telephoto lens with this, which is really cool. I don't know who was using this. I don't know for what. Maybe they were taking pictures of birds like I like to do. That's gonna do it. This is also something that I like.